I think that there is a growing demand in the foreseeable future for niche products, niche networks that people want to have their little corner of the world where they feel safe and comfortable, and they're getting exactly what they want. They don't want to have to go through 100 channels on a television, to try and find something that they like. They know what they like. They want to create a playlist of what they like, and they want that to show up without thinking. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Marketing on Tap. My name is Sam Fiorella. This is my mate, Danny Brown. Danny, today we're going to talk a little bit about Netflix. I want to talk about Netflix and chill.
Chill?
That may not be the best. Not with you, no. But I've been actually fascinated. This is something that I've been wanting to talk about for a while, and I just never thought it was, I don't know if it was just because it wasn't appropriate for this podcast or what it was, but Netflix and chill has basically become an orgy of media content. And one that will probably leave everybody feeling burned at the end of this. Hulu, Amazon Prime have now started to compete with them. Now we've got Disney that's got their own streaming service. AT&T is coming out with theirs. DC Comics even has their own now. Facebook and Apple are rumored to be coming out with their own streaming services. It's only a matter of time before YouTube jumps on the bandwagon when they realize how much streaming services.
Well, they have YouTube TV, right?
And they got YouTube TV. You're right. Premium. But we've also got CBC All Access, NBC Universal, HBO Now. They're all launching their own streaming digital only packages. And so today, that's what we're going to be talking about. Where is this all going? Is there a breaking point, and what does this mean to the rest of content consumption and content distribution, like news and music and social media? What are the trend currents here? Or is it all just going to fall apart and we should be ignoring it? So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Okay.
I think it's a great topic, but we want to talk about beer for a minute.
Yeah. So it's been a while since we had a Belgian.
Yes.
And it's been a while since we had a Belgian.
Maybe since you've had a Belgian.
Well, I had a Belgian the other week there. Another night even. But
Speaking of Netflix and chill.
Yeah. And a Belgian blonde.
Mm-hmm.
So this is from...
many jokes.
So this is from Stack Brewing, who are up in Sudbury, Ontario. And this is a light golden, as you can see. Here you go. Really light golden beer here.
She is.
She's got coriander coming through. It's medium bodied and well balanced. And it's got a long dry finish with some nectarine and pear coming through. It's 6.9% ABV, so it's a nice, good start.
So she's experienced.
Oh yeah, this is such a sexist start to the show.
Jackie, we're talking about the beer, not an actual Belgian woman.
Not my wife. And it's an IBU 20, so it's pretty easy drinking. It should be easy drinking.
That'd be nice. We could add on this too.
Have the Anna can ready.
Anna doesn't like hoppy beers, so this one I think she'll probably really like.
This should be good, I think, for Anna. Yep.
All right, Anna.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, everybody. Cheers, mate. Very much a wheat beer.
Yeah.
That's a good one for you? Okay, that means I'm not getting her beer at the end of
when
this
podcast. And I don't know if it's because of the flavors in it, obviously, but when I was pouring it, it actually smelled like champagne.
Yeah, it actually has an effervescence of a champagne, too.
Yeah, so I like it, though.
This is maybe a good New Year's drink instead of the champagne.
So yeah, Sudbury Brewing, so that's, Stack Brewing up in Sudbury. Stackbrewing.ca if you want to check them out, check the beers. But this is really nice. Good job.
Very interesting. I like it. Okay, so back to Netflix. So Netflix, like iTunes before it, grew to challenge businesses like Blockbuster. We talked about that in a previous podcast. They disrupted that. They understood what was happening in the trend currents. They understood that people didn't want to walk to a video store, rent like one of those old VHS cassettes, bring it home, have to bring it back, for $6 or $7, whatever it was. People wanted digital ways to consume media. And so they grew, they did really well. And the business model, essentially, just for point of reference for this conversation, Netflix started by sharing other people's content, which they still do, and giving a new source of revenue to networks and other producers who had aging sitcoms and old movies that weren't getting played.
Right.
They were sitting there on a shelf. It was an asset that wasn't generating enough money because there's only so much syndication you can put on TV. So, just a case in point, Netflix just paid $100 million this past year to keep another annual license for Friends, the sitcom Friends from the 90s, because it's like the most popularly streamed show on Netflix.
Binge-worthy.
Exactly. So if you think about it, it's about $100 million a year just for one show that they're paying a network that was not making that money before.
Yeah.
So it was a great partnership between the networks and the producers and Netflix. However, now they're realizing how big Netflix got. They're now creating their own content because they don't want to be reliant on third-party content anymore. And of course, people are starting to take notice. So much so that everybody's got their own thing now. So we both like the Marvel shows that were on Netflix. Mm-hmm. They're going. Right. And they're talking
going over to Disney because of their channel.
Yeah. I mean, the news, the press release is we have creative differences. The reality is creative differences over how much are you going to pay us?
Yeah.
Because if I'm going to pay you $100 million, why? I keep that money and then charge the streaming service. I'll end up in a better position doing it that way. So now we have all of these. So my question then is, where is this going? My fear for the industry is that it's going to get to a point where there's just too many. Mm-hmm. My fear for myself is that I've gone from getting rid of cable to have Netflix. Now I got to have Netflix, Hulu, because I've got to have my DC streaming service because I got to watch all Titans and all the rest of it if Netflix doesn't pick it up. Is it too much? Where is the industry going? Is this too? Are we going to get to a point where it's burnout? Too many?
Yeah, it takes me back to the 80s. I'm a video gamer, an avid video gamer.
But you were 30 then, weren't you, in the 80s? Or 35?
Yeah, almost as old as you.
Okay.
You were what, 45?
I was, sadly.
Yeah, but yes, it takes me back to the video game crash of the 80s almost. There was so many companies. So originally, Atari was around, and then Sega, and then Nintendo, etc. And then you got a whole bunch of tech companies wanting to get involved, saw the money that was there, and eventually it came to such an oversaturation of the video game market. You're now kind of left with like 3 basic video game companies now, out of all the hundreds almost that were there at the time, or at least 20, 30 of the the platform developers. Yeah. So I think from an oversaturation point of view, this has to come to a head at some point. You cannot sustain all these channels and all these platforms, and everybody still makes money and enough to keep them going.
So you think it's going to be a case of last man standing? Everybody's going to go at this and then last man standing.
Yeah, and especially, like you mentioned, you've got Netflix that's already pretty well established, but they're losing shows.
Yeah.
There's like reports that they're, even now they've got to a saturation point with their audience. Half of their audience is in the US. Now, what's the other half going to do? Are they going to take up Netflix? Probably not, because they haven't already. So they're going to go elsewhere.
Reminds me kind of what's happening with music streaming services. It's not too dissimilar that, there's so many streaming services that were coming out, with Spotify, and Vivo, on the video side of it, Apple Music, Google's got their, or Android has got their streaming service. Where is this going to go? So Danny, by way of background, Netflix, just like iTunes, grew to challenge businesses like Blockbuster, right? We talked about this in a previous episode. They understood the trend currents. They understood that people wanted to change, or people didn't want to consume videos and movies the way that they used to.
Right.
So they basically killed Blockbuster, and they spawned an entire new industry. And one of the things that made them successful at the beginning, again, this is just for background for the purpose of this conversation, they were making money by taking content that was sitting on the shelf of television networks and producers, like the reruns of Friends and MASH, which is my favorite all-time show, by the way, MASH. I grew up on that.
You were 20 when that came out, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was old.
Yeah.
I was old. I am old, sadly. I'm still better looking than you are, so we'll just put that out there. But what they were making some good money for the networks, and it was a happy partnership. Just case in point, Netflix just paid $100 million to renew Friends, the 90s sitcom, for 1 year.
Right.
So that's obviously, these guys are really happy with Netflix, but Netflix has become too big. They're now creating their own shows, competing for Emmys and all of those awards. because they don't want to rely on third-party content producers anymore because they realize that they're gunning for them. So it's creating an environment now where everybody and their mother has a streaming service. So here's the question to you. Is it too big? Are there too many? Is this industry going to just collapse because under the weight of so many people trying to charge us $5 to $10 to $20 a month? How many can we possibly have?
Yeah. No, I think it's definitely coming to, or there will be a saturation point at some stage. I mean, I'm an old school video gamer.
Yeah.
So I remember back in the 80s.
The operative word is old school.
Or just old.
No.
But old school video gamer. So I remember back in the 80s when there was like a big video game crash. You had far too many platform developers.
Yeah.
Originally 2 or 3. So Sega, Nintendo, Atari was there, Neo Geo, 3DO.
Neo Geo. How old are you?
Super old.
Clearly.
Proper geek. But so all these platforms, then got competition because the big guys like the Sonys wanted to get involved. So at some stage, it just got too big and it just crashed. And now, jump forward 30 years or so, you only have 3 main developers. Sony's still around, Nintendo's still around, and it's Microsoft, no more Sega. So I do believe that at some point, much like the video game crash, there is going to be a streaming crash of some description.
Yeah, you know what? I'm thinking that you might be right. It sounds like last man standing, narrative here. I doubt that streaming services will die.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think, if anything, television may end up dying under the weight of streaming, growing popularity of streaming services, especially if their original content is good. But what's really interesting to me is, we talked about this often. We included this in our book. We're always looking at the trend currents, right? Let's not focus on what's happening today. What does what's happening today mean or indicate about the changing demand of consumers and their behaviors?
All right.
Right. So we know that people are increasingly spending money on streaming services. I know, like myself, for example, I have Netflix.
Yeah.
And I will most likely buy the DC streaming service because, I got to get my fix of the DC, the great DC Comics shows that they're coming out with, custom movies and things like that. And, I'm probably going to end up with CBC's All Access because I want the new Star Trek Discovery series because I can't live without my Star Trek. So I'd be prepared to go, but then I'd end up probably trying to get rid of whatever television cable packages I have. But then now I'm looking at $30, $40, $50 a month. But I love the niche of it, right? Because I know that, like so many of us, there's things that we love. Right, I know you're like a big Star Wars fan. I wouldn't be surprised if Disney comes out with they're a streaming service. If they got new Star Wars movies that only stream, you'd
have to, yeah, exactly.
I mean, you would have to.
I don't want to because I think Disney's a big nasty corporation.
But you would do it.
I would do it because
you're so in love with that genre and that franchise. So I'm thinking that niche is really what we should be pulling out from here, not just sitting here bitching about the fact that we're going to probably end up paying more for all these streaming services.
Right, yeah.
Right, but it's this niche. And that gets me thinking, what does this mean for niche content elsewhere? Online books, content, newspapers, how we consume news.
Right.
Like if you take a look at network news right now, it's becoming very, split. You know what I mean? There's like left-leaning news, there's right, and there's like maybe 1 or 2 left right in the middle. Yeah. That might actually be considered true journalism. Otherwise, everything else is skewed. What do you think this is going to mean for, if we're really paying attention to these trend currents? What's this going to mean for other media sources like that? Is this going to all go niche? Is news going to go niche?
Well, I think news is already getting niche because, like you mentioned, you've got a divide of left and right now. Very little in the middle. So if you're a left-leaning news fan, you'll swing that way. If you're right, you'll go to Alex Jones and his Infowars YouTube site, whatever, and get your news from there. Yeah. So I think it's already getting niche from what you believe and what you actually pay your money to. Newspapers, they're laying online publications are laying people off left, right, and center. We just saw it last month. Vice laying people off.
And that's a great news
That's
program.
Really good. Yeah. So Vice is excellent. The big one, BuzzFeed. laying people off. So
well,
already
that one probably deserves a little bit of a.
they were improving, though. They do, but they were like some of their political stuff was pretty good. If you look at the
I mean,
BuzzFeed,
I would never like sort of criticize BuzzFeed for the quality of some of their content. I just can't take the clickbait
titles
and the way they try and gamify you, and they have to. Good for them. It's a business. They have to try and get you to come on and stay on in a competitive world where there's not a lot of money to be made.
Right.
And I think that's maybe one of these things here. There's not a lot of money to be made in news anymore.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of online publications aren't making that much money, and every report that I've read over the last few months about streaming services says there's no money to be made in streaming services either. The margins are very, very low.
Especially when you're paying $100 million
for one show. You know what I mean? It is your top show, but still for one show. And how many do you have? And you've got to constantly have new content coming in. I just don't know that consumers. I think this is maybe the question: will consumers get to a point where they've said, you know what, enough is enough. This is too niche. This is too one-sided. I need more of a mix, and then force some new entity to come out, a new Netflix to come out and sort of grab everybody and grab their shows into one place again? Or are we going to just continue to live in these separate worlds?
I think it's going to be separate. I know consumers have the power because they've got the spending dollars.
Yeah.
So consumers have that money that decides who wins, who loses. But at the same time, I don't think the network, especially the giants like, Disney, Netflix, they're not going to, they are going to want to get everybody under the same roof, but I don't think like Netflix isn't going to want to go under Disney's roof, vice versa. So it might come to the stage where, okay, you may only have 2 or 3 left, but there'll still be some where it's exclusive and you have to still have access to all different channels. Like look at the sports. I got a DAZN subscription because I had to watch Champions League. I couldn't get that anywhere else. I've already got a subscription for MLS and everything like that.
Actually, that just reminded me that I'm going to have to buy DAZN or subscribe to DAZN next year because Premier League's
going to be on DAZN.
It's coming off of network television. I'm going to go on DAZN. I'm not going to have a choice unless I hit the pub every game, and
which I'm sure will be a bad
thing. Maybe that's what I'll do. It might actually be cheaper for me to pay for the beers at the pub instead of subscribing to DAZN. That is how you pronounce it, right? DAZN.
DAZN. Yeah, whatever. Who cares?
DAZN.
That's what it is. Sorry, off topic. But here's an interesting thing about the trend topics. If you look at Netflix's audience, okay, like I mentioned, 50% is in the US.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly enough, most teens in the US have a Netflix account.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's
or they're stealing it from somebody.
Or they're stealing it, or they've got the parents or whatever. But most teens, there's a really nice report in Adweek that they did a survey of teens over the age of 16. 8,500 teens from 48 states. So it was a good number. And of that, 38% of their daily video consumption is on Netflix, compared to the next one, which is YouTube, at 33%. Hulu is only 5%. Amazon Prime is 3%. And all the other services together made up the other 5%. Now, that's the teens. That's your next audience, right? That's your audience for the next 10, 20 years. So to a point, has Netflix already won some of the war because they've got such a huge teen audience that are already loyal to this company and aren't really caring about the major? Well, at the moment
today, because there's no viable competitor.
Well, correct. There's no viable competitor at the minute, I guess. So, but it depends on what they're watching and what they're going after. And our cool shows like Titans and that pulling in the teen market. I mean, they're pulling me in anyway because I love comic books.
Yeah.
I know you do.
Yeah.
But again, has Netflix?
Because we're cool.
Has Netflix already sort of seen that, and now they're thinking ahead to saying, okay, you know what, we're losing these shows, but we're going to create these shows for this audience.
Yeah, that's actually interesting. I'm wondering if Netflix, too, with all of this competition coming up, I had an investor report that a lot of investors have been predicting that their stock price is not going to be sustainable. Right, at whatever it is now, that it's going to drop considerably because of all this competition. And now that they've hiked their prices, the largest price hike in their history just recently. And so I'm wondering if they're going to get to the point where they realize that if we don't change something about the way we do our business, that we're going to be, someone else is going to, an upstart is going to come up and beat us to it.
Right.
Somebody with maybe more money, like if you're going to get like an NBC or Universal or something, who has access to potentially the same amount, if not more money than, or a Disney. right? Maybe they need to start looking at, well, okay, we need to maybe charge differently, come up with a different pricing model, maybe not, pay more. And then I don't know what the answer is right now. I guess I'm talking to myself in circles.
Well, maybe
I don't know what that answer would be. How do they maintain their dominance?
Maybe it goes back to what's happening with the cable companies this year in Canada. I don't know if it's the same in the US and the UK or whatever, but they're now offering packages where you pick and choose what you want to watch. You're actually going, it's almost like an a la carte menu. You see that, and I will pay this. So does Netflix or Disney or whatever start to do that? Say, okay, for the teens, you've got these 5 shows or these 5 categories, and you'll only pay this. Yeah. For the middle-aged folks, you've got these, and you'll pay this.
So in other words, they're going to become Verizon, Comcast, and all of
pretty
the
much.
Other, just say, here's like 20 packages that you can subscribe to, starting with as low as $5. Yeah. So in other words, Netflix is going to become what they were fighting against, or what they were the alternative.
And maybe that's the way to do it. It's like just comes full circle. Who knows? That's
probably the case. What would be really cool if once all of these net streaming services come out, if there would be one place, maybe a physical square box in a mall someplace that has all of these shows from all of these producers, maybe on a cassette of some kind, or maybe on a DVR, like a modern version of a cassette, that you can just go and buy what you want.
Yeah.
I wonder what they would call that kind of a store. Maybe we should bring Blockbuster back. Because I'm thinking that's like, if you think about it, this is the trend, or the pattern is very similar to what happened with television programs and movies, right? When Blockbuster came out, let's just aggregate them all, put them all into one store. People can come and rent just on demand what they want, right? Or maybe that's the solution. Maybe instead of waiting for that to happen, they start making single shows available.
All right. Yeah.
So that you don't have to subscribe to an entire network like a Netflix, or break it up into small groups like you were suggesting, like, shows for kids, at $5.95 a month, and you want movies, it's another $10.95 a month. Maybe it's just one-offs. The iTunes, just rent one show for $1.99 or something. Like that.
But that's what I do on Microsoft Movies and TV.
Yeah.
On my Xbox, I get season passes for just the TV shows that I want to watch.
Right.
So like, I'm a big fan of This Is Us. Yes, I'm a tissue waving This Is Us fan. I
just see you wrapped up in your snuggie on your couch and a box of tissues watching
hot chocolate.
All right, so we're getting the signal. Thank you for our bell, Stephen. Takeaways. What's our takeaway here? Is there a trend current that we should be paying attention to here, and how is it going to change media production or media consumption of all kinds?
Yeah, I think you have to look at historically what's happened with other platforms, the music one, the video games one, the news, print, etc. And look what happened, what who came out victors, why they came out victors, what the audience, sort of participation, if you like, was. And like I say, our teens, the ones you want to go after, then you have to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah, for me, I think it's definitely looking at, if you're going to look at trend currents, for me, it's niche, because it happened with music, and it's happening with news. I think that there is a growing demand in the foreseeable future for niche products, niche networks, that people want to have their little corner of the world where they feel safe and comfortable, and they're getting exactly what they want. They don't want to have to go through 100 channels on a television, to try and find something that they like. They know what they like. They want to create a playlist of what they like, and they want that to show up without thinking. So I think that in terms of other content, and even when it comes to brand marketing, and the content production that we do for them, I think that's what we got to look at. What does your audience, what's that niche that they're after, and then feed that niche and maximize it and solidify the ownership of that audience or their attention.
Nicheflix then.
Nicheflix.
Nicheflix, that's the platform.
Yeah, don't do that. That's a horrible name. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching yet again another episode of Marketing on Tap, whether you're watching on YouTube or whether you are listening on our podcast. We appreciate it.
Yeah, and if you're on YouTube, make sure you hit the little, like, subscribe buttons up here, and the comments. Drop us a comment. Let us know what you think is going to happen with streaming services and similar. And if you're on podcasting, by all means, recommend us to your friends. And
cool. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Cheers
guys.
everyone.
Have a good one.
Till next week.
Cheers.